just so we all start with the same thing, I'm going to just have you do one quick thing for me. If you hit this button at the top that says y equals, this is where we're going to type the equations in. If you, and make this, did that make that worse or better? That made that worse. Okay, hopefully you can see it okay. If you have anything typed in any of these equations, like I have a little something here, just come right down under the arrow keys and just clear out if you have anything that's typed in there. And there's 10 different functions you can graph at once. And just clear anything out if you've got something already typed in there, maybe from another person or you've used it. Okay, the other thing I have to have you check, look here if, I'm going to highlight this on mine, if any of these words across the top that say plot 1, plot 2, plot 3, if any of these are highlighted, that can screw up what we're going to do today. So if you have that highlighted, I'm just going to use the arrow key, just go up to the top so that's kind of flashing, hit enter and arrow away from it so it's not highlighted. You don't want any of those words to be highlighted. And the other thing I'm going to have you do before we start, let me have you guys hit the window button. It's right next to the y equals in that top row, the second one from the left. Now, I just lied to you. Let me have you hit the zoom button. The zoom button's in the very middle of that top row. I'm going to have you guys go to zoom 6, which is just zoom standard, and just hit enter. It'll take you to the graph, and you can look at it for a second. But zoom standard just makes the window on the screen go from -10 to 10 on the X and -10 to 10 for the Y. And you can always go in there and alter that, but that's a good place to start. So to do that again, I just hit zoom right in the middle, and you can literally type the number 6, or you can arrow down to it and hit enter, and that'll set your screen so it's got a decent window. Okay, now what we're going to do, we're going to type these two equations into y equals. So I'm going to try and write this down kind of as I go, and you can use it if you want. All right, so the y equals button is this upper left. All right, and it already has y1. That just means different equations, so you don't actually have to type the y. I do have in this very first equation a negative. Now this is super important. You cannot use the subtraction key for negative. You have to use the negative key under the 3. So if I'm going to type negative x squared, I'm going to start with that little negative right under the 3. Now, does anybody know which button you get the x? Yeah. Yes, the one that says x on it. Not the alpha key. We're not going to use the alpha keys here. I'm going to draw a little arrow kind of on this picture. There is a button. It's kind of diagonal from the y equals. All right, it says, it's like x, t, and then a theta, and then an n. They're all on the same button. That button is what you want to use anytime you want to type x. So don't use the alpha keys to do that. You're going to use that button. All right, so let me scooch this up. Let me get this on the screen. So I'm just hitting this button. Right, there's my x. Okay, there's a couple ways you can get it squared. I usually just use the button. It's kind of diagonal from the 7 here. This squared on it, you got to type the x first, but if you hit that button, that'll square it for you. And then I'm just going to type literally just plus sign 4, then you type that x button again. Now, when you're subtracting, like this is -3, now I want to make sure I use the minus key. And like hopefully you guys can see better on your screen than mine. Mine looks a little bit bad there, but the negative symbol is a little bit smaller and a little bit higher up on the line than the subtraction key if you're comparing the two. Okay, now literally all I'm going to do, I'm just going to use the arrow key. I'm just going to arrow down to the next line, and I'm going to type that other equation, which again, use your negative key. It's negative x and then plus 1. Make sure you use the negative key under the 3. All right, and then I'm just going to hit graph. Okay, that first one is the parabola that we typed in, and the second one is the line. How many solutions do I have here? You can see 2 of them. Okay, now I'm going to write these directions down, but I'm recording this so you guys can go back and watch it if you need to. Okay, you're going to type your equations in. Obviously we did that. Okay, now to find the intersection, you are going to hit second, which is in the upper left, kind of right under your y equals. And then across the top, you're going to hit the button that says trace. The second function on that is calc. So I just say that to myself in my head. So I'm hitting second and then the trace button, but we're going to go maybe to the calculate menu. So second and then that trace button. All right. Now we want to find obviously where the two lines have a point, or we had a parabola and a line, but we want to find out where they have a point in common. So we're going to do number 5, which is the intersection. Now, two things you can do. You can literally type the number 5, or you can arrow down to it and hit enter. Either way, and it should take you to the graph. And you see this little guy that's kind of blinking. Now, you don't have to do anything perfect here, but what I would tell you, just use the arrow keys to get kind of close, and you don't use the up and down. The up and down are going to move it off the graph, so you just use the left and right arrow keys. If you accidentally did that, just go back to second calc, hit number 5. Just use the left and right arrow keys because the up and down will take you off the graph. And just somewhere close to that intersection. Mine started on the parabola because we typed that first. Somewhere close to that intersection, and then just hit enter. And then it'll automatically put that little cursor guy on the line. That's the equation we typed second, and it's really close to that. Just go ahead, hit enter again, and you're going to hit enter a third time. All right, so you're just going to move close to the intersection. I'm going to scooch this over here. And then you just hit enter 3 times when you do that. First curve, second curve, and then it'll say guess across the bottom. We don't want to guess. We want the calculator to tell us what the intersection is. Then at the very bottom of the screen, it tells you the exact point. So one of the intersections here is the point 1, 0. So it'll give you the x value here, and then your y value here, so it's just the point 1, 0. All right, now, unfortunately, and I know this is a little annoying, if you want to get the other intersection, you have to completely start the process over again. You can't just go from here. So if you want the other intersection, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hit second trace. I want the intersection, and it should have the little cursor right where we were just at, so we're going to have to move it closer to the other intersection. So again, just left and right arrow keys. You can hold them down to make it move faster. You don't have to be right on top of it, just somewhere much closer to that intersection than the one we just did. And then once you're close to it, just hit enter 3 times, and then it should tell you across the bottom the point they have in common. So 4, -3. And then I've got my 2 answers. Okay. Let me have us try. We're just going to practice. We're just practice this a couple times. Okay. So I'm going to go back in, and if you need to change the equation, you just hit that y equals button across the top. And if you want to get rid of this, you can just hit the clear button. And I just use the arrow keys to do that. Hit the clear button, and I'm going to type this guy. So I'm going to use that xt theta n button for my variable. Square it right diagonal from the 7. Then I'm going to do -8x, don't use the negative key, use the subtraction key, plus 12. You're just going to arrow down. And then I'm going to type 4x minus 15. Sorry, I should have said this earlier. You don't have to put a multiplication symbol in between like the 4 and the x or anything like that. Just literally type 4 and then the x button and then good. And I'm going to go back in and I'm going to hit the graph so I can see the graph here. How many intersections do you guys think that this one has? One that I could see. Do you think it intersects in another spot that maybe we don't see on the graph? Okay, so here's the deal. If you want the calculator to find it for you, it has to be able to see it in the screen. And so I'm going to have to alter that screen a little bit to get the other intersection. So that's why I put this example in here. Okay, now, like how would I need to move my graph to be able to see this? I can see it's going to be somewhere off the screen, obviously. How would I need to move my graph? Like, does it need to go up, down, left, right? What do we think? has to go down, so I would shift the window down. It doesn't work like a computer. That's a really good point. If we scroll down, it would go down. Like it would go, you can't really scroll on these. You got to change the screen. I need to be up higher is what I'm trying to get you. You guys see what I mean? Like I need to see more up here and I can't see it. Okay, easiest way I can tell you to do that. Okay, I'm going to hit the button across the top next to the y equals that says window. Okay, now, in general, I don't like to mess around with the screen a lot, but the X-min and X-max just tell you left to right, and this thing that says XSCL stands for the scale, so that just goes by ones. I don't want to mess around with that. My Y value at the bottom is -10, my Y value at the top is +10, and then my Y scales just goes by ones. That if you have it, some people don't, depends on your calculator, that XRES resolution, don't change that, just leave that alone. What I want to do is I need to make the graph go higher, so I need the Y value to go up farther to be able to see this intersection. So I usually just mess around with it. So maybe I put in, instead of 10, maybe I just put in 20 real quick. And then I'll just go back to the graph, and I'll see if that was enough for me to be able to see that other intersection. And it's pretty close, but I might need to go just a little bit higher. So I'm going to go back into that window button, and maybe I'll put in 25. Or put in 30. We don't have to put in the same thing, but I'm just changing the Y value, the maximum of it, to make sure I can see that intersection on the screen. As long as you can see the intersection on the screen, the calculator will find it for you. So I was just messing around with that a little bit. So that looks like it's high enough. And then I'm going to repeat the process we did in the last question. So I'm just going to hit second trace, find my intersection, which is number 5. Okay, now I'm just going to hold down the arrow key to move it a little bit faster. But just get close to one of the intersections. You're going to hit enter 3 times. And that first intersection that it went to was 3, -3. So I'm just going to jot that down. That's one of my solutions. And the other solution, I have it on the screen, so I'll be able to do it. I'm going to hit second trace, intersection again. So number 5, or just arrow down to that and hit enter. And you're just going to hold down that arrow key to move this a little closer to the intersection that we want. Doesn't have to be right on top of it, but once you're close, just hit enter 3 times. And that other intersection is 921. Okay, is anybody having a question? All right, now, if I want to put the window back to how it was, if you want, just hit that zoom and then number 6. Zoom standard will put you back -10 to 10, -10 to 10 for the X and Y. Can't see the intersection anymore, but that's always a good place to start. And then one more time, I'm going to go back into Y equals here. And we'll do this last one. Okay. So we're just going to do our x squared plus 6x and then plus 4. Now, I just have a horizontal line, just y equals -5. Oops, sorry. Just don't forget, you got to use the negative key. So right under the 3, that's your negative symbol, and then the 5. And I'm going to hit my graph there. Sorry, that screen on that's not coming up super well. How many intersections do you think this system has? It's really tricky. This is just going to touch the vertex of that parabola there. So I'm going to go in and do that second trace. Just arrow down to number 5 or hit number 5. And then just move your cursor. Left or right arrow keys just kind of close to that intersection. Enter 3 times. And you can see on mine, well, maybe you can't. I feel like this is really out of focus. I'm sorry, guys. It's got the paper in focus. I have this like -3.000 and then a 1. Sometimes because of the pixelation of the calculator, it'll do something like that. If you get a big long decimal like that, that's just trying to represent -3. It's on mine. And yours maybe didn't do that. Maybe yours just said 3. It just kind of depends on the calculator. But if there's a pixelation issue, like if you get 0.99999, just go ahead and round that to the nearest whole number. Is anybody having a question? Now, I'm going to have you guys switch, and we're going to do some graphs on Desmos. Okay, so if you want to grab your laptop, if you don't already have it out, go ahead and grab it real quick. You literally have to type y equals on this one. Okay, so this is my first one, just y equals, and I'm going to have negative 8 over x. So I'm just going to type negative 8, and then I'm going to use the backslash to get division for the x. Now, to get out of the fraction here, just use the right arrow key so you're not in the fraction anymore. And then I'm just going to type plus 3. We'll do a whole unit on this second semester. This is a, yes, you do have, yep, definitely. This is an inverse variation here, but we're going to see where this intersects the line y equals negative 1/2 x. Okay, so you can click on it, or I'm just going to use the arrow key to get down to the next equation. I'm going to type y equals negative 1/2, and then just, again, arrow to the side and put the x. Now, the super nice thing about Desmos versus the graphing calculator, I don't have to do that second trace, that whole process. You can literally just come over with your mouse, and if you hover over the intersection, it will automatically snap to that point. I clicked on it. If you click on it, it will write it for you, or if you just hover over it, it will show it to you. If you actually click it, though, it will stay there so you can see it. So the two intersection points, those graphs there, I would write down, let's see, it's going to go through negative 8, 4, and to negative 1. And in terms of changing the window here, if you guys have your touch screen, and this is not the greatest example because I can see the intersections right this, but you can literally, if you just kind of scrunch on the X or Y axis, you can manipulate the screen. So you don't have to go in and change a window or anything. Oh, I can't get it here. Anything like that. You can just manipulate the screen with your fingers to move it however you want to see it. So that's the nice thing about Desmos versus the calculator. Okay, let me try this next system. Does anybody know what the shape of the first equation? I got x squared plus y squared equals 25. It is a circle. If you have x squared plus y squared equals a number, it's x squared plus y squared equals the radius squared. That should make a circle. Do you guys know how to make a squared on the computer? You do? Okay. If not, just real quick, I'm going to type x, and then I'll write this on the side if you don't know this. Just hit shift and then the number 6. And the shift on that, it looks like a little triangle with no base. It's called a caret, and that'll give you an exponent. So just hit shift 6, and then I'm going to type 2 for my exponent. To get out of the exponent, just like getting out of the fraction, I'm just going to use the right arrow key to put myself back on the level with the rest of the question. Then I'm going to put plus y. I'm going to do that shift 6 to get it squared. Just arrow over, and then equals 25. And mine looks distorted because I messed with the window with my fingers. So it's not a square screen here, but this should be a circle. Let's see if I can manipulate that a little bit. All right, now the second equation is just a line. So y equals 7x plus 25. And you can see this line goes through this circle in 2 different spots. You can just hover over the point with the mouse. If you want to click on it, it will actually snap that in place and leave that point for you to see. And same thing here. If you want to just hover over it, you should be able to see it. But if you want to snap it in place, you can do that as well. So the 2 intersections for the circle and the line, I've got negative 3, 4, and I've got negative 4, negative 3. Is anybody having a question? Okay, I'll do one more here. All right, now, you can just type over the top, or you can X these out, whatever's easier if you want to write a new equation. My last system here, I've got y equals negative x squared. So to square it, I'm going to hit that shift 6, arrow over plus 2. And I'm just going to arrow down to get to the next equation, y equals 3. And there's my line. What would you guys say for the intersection of these two? No, none. They don't touch each other. Okay, So that can happen too. The last one here, this is going to be no solution. Is anybody having a question?